Thưa quý vị, trong quá trình hội nhập với kinh tế thế giới, hàng hóa và dịch vụ của Việt Nam đã được biết đến trên hầu khắp toàn thế giới. Tuy nhiên, dường như vẫn chưa có một doanh nghiệp Việt Nam nào có một thương hiệu quốc tế ở trên thế giới. Và đó là chủ đề chúng ta sẽ thảo luận trong chương trình Cận cảnh ngày hôm nay với ông Richard Moore. Ông Richard Moore là một chuyên gia nổi tiếng về xây dựng thương hiệu. Ông đã có 40 năm làm việc ở trong lĩnh vực xây dựng hình ảnh thương hiệu cho các doanh nghiệp và ông đã có trên 17 năm làm việc tại Việt Nam. So, Mr. Richard Moore, thank you for coming. So, Mr. Moore, with over 40 years in experience of brand building and you're over 17 years in Vietnam, my first question is why we don't see a single Vietnamese company that owns an international brand name?
Certainly are many reasons for this, but I think two strong reasons. One is simply lack of experience. We have to remember that Vietnam's experience in the free market is about 25 years, less than 25 years. Đổi mới occurred in 1986. In those days, brands were just beginning to start. In fact, there were no brands. There were just companies that were marketing goods and products. And the marketplace was very receptive to that because at last they had some choice. That period of time was very young. There's just lack of experience. Not only in the experience of doing business, but the experience of experiencing marketing, of experiencing a brand. When I grew up as a child, marketing was all around me. It was inescapable. You walk into a supermarket, you see packaging. You turn on the television, you see advertising. You read a magazine, you see ads. So marketing comes into us in a free market culture almost by osmosis. But most of the leaders of the companies in Vietnam right now are from state, if they're a large company, they probably come from a state-owned company background. They are almost certainly over 50 years old, yes. Which means during their educational process, they did not have access to some of the kind of marketing education, marketing materials that are commonplace in free market countries.
That's my experience.
Yeah.
During 70s, I was studying in university. I studied business.
You did?
I didn't take any course in marketing.
Yeah.
Just because in school we didn't have a course in marketing.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So you say the age of business leaders also important?
Yes, I think so, because those that are over 50 haven't really experienced branding. It's not because they're timid. These leaders are really courageous. They have guts. They are very intelligent. And they have a lot of drive. They've had to push through the companies they've created out of really nothing, out of what was purely a planned economy. So I have the greatest admiration for these leaders. But when it comes to understanding branding and it comes to understanding marketing, many of them just do not have the foundation yes. To understand it the way someone younger might.
But they have some assistant, they have staff. But one time you mentioned to me that they also lack of confidence.
Yes, and that's comes from that lack of experience. Because they're not so familiar with marketing and branding, they're a little reluctant to go into a foreign environment where the way they've done things so successfully here in Vietnam may not work. And at the same time, here in Vietnam, the market is growing 7% or larger for many, many years, every year. And the opportunities were right here.
Yes.
So for many of them, they think, well, it would be foolish for me to try a really risky venture overseas when things are booming right yes. here in Vietnam.
But you have been in Vietnam, of course, off and on for over 17 years. You compare the situation now and 17 years ago. Is it different in terms of brand building?
Yes, it's enormously different. I spend half my year here every year. I'm 2 months here and 2 months in New York and then back. And every time I come back, I see more understanding of what branding is. When I first began talking to brands back then, they weren't brands, they were companies actually. At first an effort to teach them about marketing communication.
Yes.
Just pure elements of marketing communication such as advertising and posters and brochures and those sort of things. I would say up to a point in time, maybe 5 years ago, those companies by then had learned really what marketing communication is. And we could see at that point in time really good advertising, really good elements of advertising in all different kinds of media.
Yes.
But what we didn't see then was a cohesive single voice in all of those materials. A company may have great ad, or might have a great billboard, it might have great business cards,
yes.
But they may not look like they were all coming from the same company. They may be very good in their own right.
Yes.
And maybe a little less than 5 years ago, these companies began to realize that, hey, we need to begin talking in a single voice.
Yeah.
Probably was helped along by WTO opening,
yeah.
and a lot of other foreign companies coming in and
yes.
bringing their years and years ago developed really solid brands.
Yes. We'll talk more about a
yeah.
foreign company coming to Vietnam. There's a pros and cons for Vietnamese company. But now, I'm just curious that if, in your view, when Vietnam will have company that own an international brand name, you have to wait for how long?
I think when the next generation is taking office. And that's happening rather quickly. Those entrepreneurs who are in their 30s now are those that are going to bring it to play. I'm a branding person. I deal in images. And when we begin working with our clients, the first thing that we begin working with is not an image. It is with what is different about this company. How does this brand differentiate itself from its competition? We spend the first part of our process trying to figure that out. And only after we figure that out do we begin building a brand and building an identity for it. So differentiation really is related to innovation. So in terms of when there will be a brand ready to go outside Vietnam, the real question is, when will innovation begin in Vietnam? And it's those leaders that are in their 30s who are going to figure that out. They haven't yet. I don't see any trend, any national trend about what might be called innovation in Vietnam. Yeah. In Japan, I lived in Japan from 1959 to 65, at a time when Japan was thought of as, oh, a country that just makes cheap products and they imitate what other people do. By the time I left in 1965, I had witnessed the invention of the Walkman, cameras that were small and really high quality, the beginning of the small automotive industry. When I got back to the United States, everyone was still thinking that Japan was a country that still produced, toys.
Yes.
And it was about maybe 10 years before...
Only 10 years?
Well, only, but that's quite a long time. That means that perception was lagging behind reality by about 10 years. This won't happen again. Today, in this age of television communication and internet and instant marketing, things will happen a lot faster.
Thưa quý vị, chúng ta đang trao đổi với ông Richard Moore và chúng ta vừa trả lời câu hỏi tại sao Việt Nam chưa có những công ty mang thương hiệu toàn cầu. Và trong phần tiếp theo chúng ta cùng quay trở lại và chúng ta sẽ xem cái nhu cầu phải có một thương hiệu toàn cầu ở Việt Nam như thế nào. Thưa quý vị, chúng ta cùng quay trở lại với phần tiếp theo của chương trình và chúng ta sẽ cùng nói về nhu cầu phải có thương hiệu toàn cầu đối với các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam. So, Mr. Richard Moore, I just meet some business leader and they just say that I'm doing garment for Nike, I'm doing shoe for Adidas, I'm selling coffee to Nestle, and I'm doing fine. Why I need a brand name? when I have already have participated in brand name of Nike, Adidas, or Nestle. So what you think about that? If business in Vietnam, they are aware of the demand for brand name?
I think they're aware of the demand for a brand name, but they're not certain about the way of creating one. Those brands that are making commodities and selling them to brands who put their own label on them are not getting the benefit of the end sale. The price point that they are getting is much, much lower than what they could be getting if they had their own brand name.
Yes, but we see in the world there are so many countries are now selling rice, coal, crude oil, and they're all the same.
Yes.
Yes, crude oil from Vietnam is not much different from the one in Indonesia or from Middle East.
Exactly.
And the coffee Robusta from Vietnam is not much different from Robusta from just say Indonesia.
Oh, it's
so
better.
Why we need to put money to develop our own brand name?
Because by doing so, your profit margin is going to be significantly higher. And also, you are going to have a more sustainable future. Who's to know if Nestle's next year is going to be buying your product, or Nike is going to be buying a component from you? And if they choose not to, for whatever reason, then what happens to your business? On the other hand, if you develop a brand name, which is to say that you are developing a relationship with an audience, then you have a direct relationship. Then you have a sustainable business.
But also one question I often ask people like you. I say, if a business, they invest money into a machine, they have very tangible assets, but they invest money into developing a brand name and a brand identity. They spend real money, but what they get is invisible. So is how often successful in their investment in brand name?
Like anything that is new for a company, a new venture, there is a risk. That risk can be greatly lessened if the company follows some very clear principles in developing a brand name, in developing a brand image for their brand. And it doesn't start with the name. It doesn't start with a good-looking logo. What it starts with is differentiation. The first thing that those brands should be thinking about is, how are they different from their competitors? When we start working with a brand, that's the first thing that we do. And those differences may be functional, or those differences may be emotional, philosophical. But whatever they are, there should be a very clear process that discovers what they are and which of them are most valuable to use as a foundation for building the brand. This is where many companies in Vietnam make a mistake, is that they begin with the image. And prior to the image, there needs to be criteria for that image.
Yes, but just say now, just very specific company, if we have a certain amount of resource, I will put it into improve my products, or I put it in building a good advertisement, a good logo, and a good identity.
It's really not as simple as that. You have to have a balance of those things. A company that does not develop good products, that does not have good service, is going to fail. But a company that develops good products and services and doesn't know how to create a good image for themselves will also likely fail.
When you're going out and talk to business and talk in conference in university in Vietnam, you often mention a Japanese model.
Because I think in a number of ways, there's a similarity. Japan was devastated by a world war. They had a very weak economy for many years, and they grew out of that. and became really a world power in marketing. And I think that Vietnam has similar potential. And I just see that Vietnamese people in general and the business leaders in particular are very, very aggressive about improving themselves.
Yes, but Japan, when they developed their countries, that's quite a long time ago compared to Vietnam right now. At that time, we didn't have globalization and we didn't have global value chains, so they need their own Sony, they need their own Panasonic, they need their own Honda. But now we say that we have global value chain. We don't need to develop a brand name Sony. We still can participate in Sony production. We still can participate in Honda productions. Some business in Vietnam may say that.
Yes, but again, what they would be missing is the profit margin between making components and marketing a brand. That's a huge difference.
Yes. You mean that if people now, they participate in global value chains, they produce parts for Sony, for Honda, they still need to develop their own brand name, or only they need global brand name when they access to final consumer?
No, I think they need to make their own brand name.
Anyway.
Yes. Because without it, they really do not have a stable relationship with their market.
So probably I would say that you are among the group of foreigners that knows Vietnamese economy better than anyone. So now you could look at Vietnam. What sector in Vietnam is in best position and there's most demand for brand name?
In terms of international brand name?
Yes.
I would say at this particular point in time, those brands that have something different. And the brands that have something different in the international marketplace right now are brands that express a strong cultural element. And that's why we see a brand like Chuyên or a brand like Pho 24 building their brand outside of Vietnam. They are the first ones. We could say that coffee is a unique Vietnamese tradition. Other countries drink coffee, but Vietnam has a very special way of preparing and drinking their coffee. Pho is, of course, a very traditional Vietnamese meal. So these are things that are very Vietnamese, and therefore they have already something different about them that they can go out to the world with. Until other brands have some point of difference in their products like that, some innovation, it will be difficult for Vietnamese brands to appear in foreign markets.
So we mentioned that building an international brand name is not easy. And the business is doing by themselves. What you think in Vietnam, the government in Vietnam can help business in doing that?
Because the factor is innovation, I don't think the government can do much to help the companies.
Yes.
Because this is really the responsibility of entrepreneurs. Governments are not in the innovation business in any country.
Yes, but
my country or any country, they're not in the innovation business. It's entrepreneurs who are in the innovation business. So what a government can do is to not get in the way of innovation and to support the growth of entrepreneurs. How do you support the growth of entrepreneurs? Entrepreneurs generally come from a strong middle class. They don't come from a long tradition. They come from families that have new money. They have new ideas. Just this past weekend, I was giving a lecture with two of my colleagues in our company at the National Economics University in Hanoi. In this particular talk, I was about a minute into the talk, and somebody's hand went up. And there was a young lady, and I said, "Yes, you have a question?" She said, "Yes. Would you hold the mic a little closer to your mouth, please?" And I was taken aback, and she was right. I did need to hold it closer to my mouth. That was just the first question. Out of this 3-hour talk, I would say about over an hour of this was just questions of answers, of hands going up in the air. This is the new generation of leaders, and this is the generation that is going to lead Vietnam out of Vietnam.
Yes, and that's also the trend you have seen in other countries over 40 years experience of you.
Yes. I know much less about other countries than I do about my own and Japan and now Vietnam. But yes, I see that same sort of thing occurring. And it's a joy to see.
Thưa quý vị, chúng ta đang trao đổi với ông Richard Moore, giám đốc của công ty Richard Moore Associates, một công ty chuyên về xây dựng hình ảnh, thương hiệu cho doanh nghiệp. Và trong phần tiếp theo, chúng ta cùng nói về những lợi ích cũng như những chi phí của doanh nghiệp trong việc xây dựng một thương hiệu toàn cầu. Thưa quý vị, chúng ta cùng quay trở lại với phần thứ 3 của chương trình. Chúng ta đang trao đổi cùng ông Richard Moore và chúng ta đang nói về câu chuyện xây dựng thương hiệu đối với doanh nghiệp Việt Nam. So Richard, you often you see a lot of mistakes for company when they doing brand name. Some mistakes are just tactical, they can redo it. Or some mistakes are, we say, strategic. When they commit that, they have to redo from very beginning. So what are the most common mistake for Vietnamese company?
Well, when it comes to branding and the creation of a brand identity system, most of the mistakes that I see are strategic. And because they make strategic mistakes, then the tactical mistakes follow. The biggest mistake that's made is with large companies that have multiple sub-brands under them. They include sub-brands under the parent's brand name of businesses that are too far away, too distant from the business that the parent is in. This erodes confidence, consumer confidence, in who the brand is. I know your profession, you know my profession. That helps us as human beings understand who we are and what we do. And brands are the same way. Brands are really very much like you and I. So when a brand is diversified in so many different things that are really unrelated to one another, it's difficult for consumers to build confidence in this.
Is it the situation only in Vietnam when we have big corporations, they doing the shipbuilding, they can do mining, and also do the tourist, hotel, and they open university? I mean, there's too many fields in one corporation.
Other countries that I'm familiar with. And I think the reason for that is that after Doi Moi, the market just opened and the consumer base was happy to have products made by anyone that could give them a choice in life about their basic needs. Today it's a different story. Today those same brands that were very successful, even in very, very diverse businesses, are in competition with international brands that really focus their brand on a specific area of business, and by doing so can get a much clearer image into the mind of the marketplace.
Yes, so people say that when you talk to a business, you often talk about 3 questions. What are 3 questions you mentioned?
Oh, well, these are really a way of determining how close a sub-brand should be to the identity, the image of the parent brand.
Yes.
The first question is, if we communicate our relationship between the parent and the sub-brand very openly to the marketplace, is that beneficial to the parent brand? I mean, will that really help me? If I'm a mining company and I buy a beer company, is that going to help my mining business? Another question is, from the sub-brand's point of view, if it is very clear that the sub-brand has a relationship with the parent brand, is that good for the sub-brand? Just to take the mining company and the beer company, is that going to help me sell beer? And the third question is really from the consumer's point of view. When they see the relationship What's in it for me? What are they going to think?
I just tell one company in Vietnam, say, we see Sony, and we have Sony PlayStation,
Mm-hmm.
we have Sony Walkman, we have Sony Trinity, but can we see Sony cigarettes?
Probably not, although I confess, I once saw an advertisement in which there was a Sony brand on it.
Yes.
And there were kitchen fixtures. And I thought, my gosh, Sony has gone into the kitchen appliance business. And I thought, well, you know, Sony's really smart. They'll probably do a good job of that. And then I realized the advertisement was just talking about some form of communication that they had developed for companies like the kitchen appliance company.
Yes.
They weren't selling kitchen appliances at all. But my first thought was, here's a really bright company and they can be in any business.
Yes.
So there are companies like Virgin Airlines, for example, who have this kind of an aura around them, which they have very carefully built. And they have a great deal more latitude about how far they can extend their brand into other businesses. Cigarettes is probably still too far for Sony.
You mean in your business, when you're working with company, you talk a lot about building brand ID, brand identity, and also to manage brand image. What are different from the brand ID and brand image, at least for Vietnamese company, on the first step of building?
It's a very good question. It's the same for any company. Companies have 100% control over their brand identity. They can control their logotype, their name, the colors they use, the typefaces they use, the formats they use, and all different kinds of media. But they cannot control brand image. Brand image is up to you and up
Yes.
to me. It's the images that come into our mind, but we know that there is a strong relationship between brand identity and brand image.
Yes.
If a company is very careful about the identity, the way it puts together all of its communications, if all of these communications are visually and verbally well coordinated, and if they all grow out of the strategic long-term direction of the company, then there is a good chance that the image that's formed in the mind of the marketplace, the brand image, is going to be very close to the brand identity. If a company doesn't take that care to closely coordinate all of these things, or to grow them in a way that doesn't really relate to their strategy, then the chances of the marketplace mind somehow magically putting this together in a favorable way is really not going to happen.
So, in your experience in Vietnam, you see what is more difficult for Vietnamese company, to build a good brand ID or to manage and positive brand image?
Well, managing the brand image is always the most difficult because there are many things that go into it. It isn't just the brand identity. It is, of course, the quality of the products, the quality of service, the attitude that the company has about the way it relates to the marketplace. And nowadays we have lots of ways for a company to relate to the marketplace.
Yes. So over 17 years in Vietnam, now you can say, what is a special condition for Vietnamese company, talking about brand building right now?
I think the most favorable condition for them up until now has been that the marketplace was very open and willing to accept new products and new services. But today that is changing rapidly. Actually, we have a condition where the consumer is more knowledgeable and more sophisticated in their understanding of branding than many of the companies. And this is an unusual condition. It's usually the brand which leads perception of the marketplace. But here in Vietnam today, the consumers have a clear understanding of what a brand image is than the businesses. So what is a unique advantage for Vietnamese companies? That is that many companies still don't know that. So the company that can develop a strong brand identity and accordingly a strong brand image has a very significant competitive advantage.
Yes, but now the Vietnamese company may say, is it too late? Because if I want to build a brand for coffee, probably I should have built when Nestle is not here. If I want to build my brand for just say detergent or soap, I would have done that before FBNC and Unilever is here. Is it too late now?
For brands where there is a major leader, yes, it's probably too late for you to become the leader. But in the marketplace, there are many different positions. There's second position, there's third position, there's fourth position, and so forth. So there's still opportunities for brands to develop good, strong image that can take those positions in the marketplace and learn from that experience, and perhaps not create the next coffee brand, but create the next brand of a new innovative drink that the world has not seen yet.
Okay. So, Richard, here's the final questions, I think, for the program today. Over your 40 years experience, what you see the business now different from 40 years ago when we did the brand without internet, and without TV, without mobile phone?
It's quite different. Brand identity 40 years ago was not called brand identity. It was called corporate identity. And it was thought of something to identify corporations. Now it is something to build a relationship, a strong relationship with our consumers. And with our customers, there are these new kinds of media which give us, if we are skilled in using them, a bigger opportunity than ever to develop a strong relationship with our customer base, especially in the more recent development of what we call brand engagement through social media. And this is to use skillfully these new, popular, growing like crazy social media tools that are available to us. Many brands think that this is just another form of marketing communication, like a new form of television or a new form of this or a new form of that. But it's different than that. Brand identity and marketing communication in general is basically one-way communication. The company has an idea and it sends it out into the marketplace. It has a message and it sends it out as communication to the marketplace. But social media is two-way conversation. It is true dialogue. And so it is a very strong way of developing a relationship. And that's why we think that social media is much more connected, much more akin to brand identity than it is to general marketing communications.
You just mentioned something that's very important that we need to discuss in great detail probably in the next meeting. Talk about the social network, social marketing, and say brand engagement. Thưa quý vị, chúng ta vừa có cuộc trao đổi khá thú vị với ông Richard Moore và chúng ta vẫn chưa đủ thời gian để đi hết chiều sâu của câu chuyện. Chúng ta đã nói về tại sao Việt Nam chưa có những thương hiệu toàn cầu. Chúng ta đã nói về nhu cầu phải có thương hiệu toàn cầu và chúng ta đã nói về những lợi ích cũng như những chi phí. Trong phần sau, trong buổi thảo luận sau, chúng ta sẽ có dịp đi sâu vào việc chúng ta vừa nói, đó là sử dụng những công cụ marketing, những công cụ truyền thông hiện đại trong marketing. Thưa quý vị, chương trình của chúng tôi xin tạm dừng tại đây. Xin cảm ơn quý vị đã theo dõi chương trình. So, Mr. Richard Moore, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today.